Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this first Learning Lab of ANH 2020. Welcome and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Hallie Perlich. I am on the Imana team that manages the ANH Academy Conference each year. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Learning Lab. So I will hand it over to your facilitators to take it from here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Mary from Brook. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Learning Lab on Animal Welfare for Agriculture, Nutrition and Health Research. It's great to see so many of you here, and I think more of you are still joining. And I would like to welcome our panelists. We have a great range of diverse organizations who have collaborated to bring this Learning Lab to you. I will introduce them or let themselves introduce themselves in a minute, but let me just tell you what you can expect today. We will cover three parts. First of all, we'll do a very short recap of the introductory video that we hope you all will have watched already. So that will be very brief. And then we'll have two blocks. One will be on measuring welfare, and one will be on animal welfare and research ethics. In each block, we will invite you to join some breakout groups and do some practical work, followed by a discussion. So now I would like to show you our team. I can't move my, oh yeah, you should be able to see the names of everyone who has put this lab together for you. And
excuse me, Anna, excuse me, we can see your note slide view. So just to switch the display settings there.
Okay, let me just sort this out. Is this better, Hallie? Okay, brilliant. So, this is, I understand, the first Learning Lab, so there are about to be some glitches. Can you see the names now? Okay, so this is our team. In the order that people are listed here, could all of the facilitators, panelists, make sure their microphone is open, their camera is on, and just say your name and your institution. Robin?
Hi, this is Robin Alders from Chatham House, and you're just getting my photo tonight to save bandwidth. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Doyle from Melbourne Uni.
Hi, I'm Kate Fletcher from Brook, Senior Manager for Global Animal Welfare.
Hi, I'm Delia Grace, working at International Livestock Research Institute in Kenya, and also at the Natural Resources Institute in Kent, UK.
James, okay. Hello, I'm Dr. Vincent Olo. I work at the Brook East Africa office.
Hi, I'm Dr. Samantha Opere. I work for KENDAT, which is based in Kenya.
Hello, I'm Dr. Clara Saville, and I'm the Head of Global Animal Health, Welfare and Community Development at Brook.
Hi there, my name's Bex, and I am the Comms Officer at Brook.
And I am Anna. I'm the Global Communications Manager at Brook, and together with Bex, we'll be running behind the scenes and helping the ANH team manage questions. So now, before we kick off the session, we would like to ask you two short questions. We know that you come from a variety of backgrounds from all around the world. Some of you may know a bit about animal welfare, some may know very little, some of you may know quite a lot. So we would like to check, in your own perception, how much do you think you know about animal welfare? ranking from 1 to 5, where 1 is nothing at all and 5 is I'm pretty much an expert. So you will see a question with 5 options pop up on your screen right now, and could you please answer? I can see most of you have voted, 70% and going up, so please vote if you haven't yet. %85%. I shall end it now because I understand that the facilitators are not voting because we know they are experts. 88% voted. I'll end the poll now and I'll show you the results, interesting results. So you can see that there is actually, most of you are in the middle towards the high end. So you feel you know quite a bit about animal welfare, although you are perhaps not experts. So we hope today that we will help you increase this knowledge and feel more confident. So we shall ask you this question again and we will see whether your answer has changed. And now let me ask you another question, again ranking from 1 to 5, when 1 is low, 5 is high. How important is animal welfare in research? Please answer now. %86% voted, so I shall end the poll now and show you the results. Look at this, this is interesting. Most of you think that animal welfare is important or very important in research. And those of you, very few of you, who think it's not, we really hope to change your mind. And if you do think it's important, we hope to show you how to make sure that you really do account for animal welfare in your work, whether it's your research or also your teaching. So thank you everyone for this. I will now hand over to my colleague Kate, who will do a brief recap of the video that most of you hopefully will have watched, but just some brief points. And I wish you a very good session.
Thanks, Anna. I'll just share my screen. Do I need to, or are you doing that? I'm doing that.
Please you share your screen, Kate.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, one moment, everybody. Okay, so hopefully everybody had a chance to watch the introductory video that we talked about and that we sent out for everybody. It was just a recap really, and we'll go into these points in a little bit more detail during today's presentations. That we introduced you to various frameworks that can be used to measure welfare, and we'll come on to those in more detail first of all today. This one here is the 5 domains, which hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at and understand how these first 4 domains, health, nutrition, environment and behaviour, all contribute to an animal's mental state and to their overall welfare. And by looking at various ways in which we can improve each domain, we can improve that animal's quality of life. We also talked about the aspects that affected welfare in terms of people's livelihoods, human health, sustainable development and project outcomes, and how this idea of one health and one welfare, where all these aspects link together. So by investing in improving human health or the environment, we also end up improving animal welfare. So again, we'll talk about those a little bit more in today's presentation, but if you have any particular questions about that video, then do let us know, and hopefully we'll be here to answer those questions as we go through today. Anna, am I sharing the next presentation, the Measuring Welfare one?
Yes, please. So why don't we go straight into the next session, unless there are any burning questions that people can type in the chat. If there aren't, let's just move on straight to the measurement session.
Okay, are you sharing that? I thought you were sharing that one.
If you could, that would be fantastic. Then you have.
Yes, only problem is I won't be able to see my notes on, but that's fine. Okay.
Kate, are you going to share your screen?
Yes, sorry, yes, I was confused. I thought you were, so I'll just give me one moment, I'll find it, unless you've got quicker access to it.
If you don't mind, go ahead so that you can flip the slides. Please bear with us, everyone. Teething problems.
Hopefully everybody can see this.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so today in this presentation about measuring welfare, we're going to cover an overview of the welfare assessment tools, which will recap on the 5 freedoms and the 5 domains that we introduced in the videos. We'll look at the importance of preventative measures. So that's this idea of kind of preventing poor welfare rather than kind of waiting for things to go bad and then looking at how we can fix it. And we'll also look at welfare considerations when planning research. So animal welfare mitigation risks that you can, ways to mitigate risks you can look at when planning your research. And that will lead us on to some breakout groups later, where we'll each be given a case study on a different species, and we can look at ways in which we can look at their welfare and ensuring it. That will then lead us on to this afternoon session, where we talk a bit more about ethics and the considerations in relation to research. So the introductory video talks about the 5 freedoms, and just to recap, this is a welfare framework that was first introduced in the 1970s by the UK Farm Animal Welfare Council. It's the most widely used and widely known framework for talking about animal welfare, and it looks at this freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury or disease, freedom to express normal behaviour, and freedom from fear and distress. Whilst it's really widely used, it's now considered quite a restrictive and perhaps outdated framework, because what it looks at as this freedom from negates is it's looking at how we can avoid the negative rather than promote the positive. So whilst it is understood, and it might be one that you might have already encountered in your work or heard about in the scientific community, it's something that certainly we as Brook and the wider animal welfare scientific world are trying to get away from, this idea that welfare doesn't just encompass avoiding the negative and looking at how we can ensure an animal is free from situations, but also looking at how we can promote the positive and we can create opportunities for an animal's welfare to be improved. So that leads us on to the 5 domains, which was a new framework introduced by a scientist called David Meller at the kind of 2011, 2013, around that time. This idea being that these 5 domains, nutrition, environment, physical health, and behaviour all contribute to an animal's mental domain. So it's allowing for this fact that animals are considered sentient, and there is that scientific evidence out there to show that animals, just like humans, are capable of experiencing emotions. And to give you an example of that, then the 5 freedoms might talk about nutrition, and it might say an animal needs to have provision of food. The 5 domains takes that to a new level and looks at how does that element of nutrition allow for an animal's emotions. So does it have a diet that is suitable in variety? Does it have a diet that allows it to experience natural behaviour such as foraging behaviour? Can we allow for this idea that an animal would actually experience pleasure from tasting nice food the same way that we would, and giving it those opportunities where not only is it given food, which would meet the 5 freedoms, but it's actually allowed to experience the emotions that are related to that food and to those nutritional needs. And so can it be provided with its nutritional needs without having to compete with other animals, for example, without having to fight over resources to ensure that there's sufficient food for everybody. So that's just kind of one example of how it's looking at a more holistic view of assessing welfare and considering animals' emotions and how all these domains interact with each other to ensure an animal has a good quality of life. This quote here is one that kind of encompasses that idea behind the 5 domains. So it's looking at not only can we allow animals to survive, but we can actually help them thrive. So it talks about an animal having a life worth living or a life not worth living, or the aim being for an animal to actually have a good life and to be actually able to enjoy positive experiences, and this balance of positive and negative experiences across an animal's entire lifetime being tipped into there being more positive experiences. So how can we help animals thrive? Outlined here are the 5 domains, and these should be things that we're looking at considering throughout any interactions that we have with animals, looking at how can we actually create these opportunities for improvements to be made and for their overall experience to be positive rather than neutral or negative, and how can we be a good influence on their life and give them more opportunities to experience good positive welfare. So I'll now hand over to my colleague who's going to talk to you about this concept of One Health, One Welfare, and how we can look at this idea of encompassing human health and welfare into dealings with animals.
Hi. So just to recap on what had been mentioned in the video that everyone watched, One Health it recognizes that human health, animal health, and ecosystem health are linked, and they to achieve sustainable change and optimum health in any of the areas, all aspects have to be addressed. So if we look at the current global trend of antimicrobial resistance, research has shown that some of the sources of antimicrobial resistance is from animals, because we are pumping too many antibiotics that are not really necessary into the animals, and this eventually goes into the environment and into the humans when they consume the meat, animal products. The other aspect is One Welfare, which serves to highlight the interactions between animal welfare, human well-being, and the environment. So if we go to the second statement, it says a good animal welfare increases productivity and longevity for livestock and working animals by preventing poor animal welfare and promoting good welfare. It's easier and more cost effective than not investing in it. So if we look at examples based on the 5 domains, we'll see that on issues of nutrition, that animals need to be fed to meet their production needs. So basically, if you have dairy cattle, your feeding should be focused on increasing their milk production. If you have working donkeys, the feeding should focus on providing them the necessary energy they need for the work. If you have broiler chicken and layers, then you'd feed them according to their energy needs throughout the different stages of their life. When we're going towards health of the animals, basically we need to focus more on preventative medicine, veterinary medicine, and less on the curative. So we're focusing on ensuring the animals are getting regular health checks. We're doing timely vaccination. Instead of what we normally do, which is basically managing any outbreaks that happen in the farms or in an area where livestock are usually found. In terms of cost effectiveness, then you find that you save more money by basically feeding your animals better and doing vaccinations and regular health checks than if you were just letting your animals feed on any type of feed, and if they were not regularly checked by a vet to prevent any possible diseases that are endemic in the area. Also, when we're looking at the environment, basically they say cleanliness is close to godliness. So if your animals are constantly living in a filthy shed or boma or shelter, then they're more likely to get sick more often. If you have chickens that are crammed in a cage, many chickens in a cage, then it would affect their behavior. So you'd have chickens that they basically turn into cannibals because they are pecking on each other, and in the end this affects the overall production. So maybe they won't be as fat enough, and when you take them to the market, the quality of the meat and the weights that you have are not cost effective, and you end up spending more money on inputs, that's feed and transportation, and getting very little out of the animals based on the meat that you'll get. I think now I'll hand over to Robin on the next slide.
Can I have a request for Kate, please? Because you're sharing slides. Could you put them on slideshow mode, please, so that it's easier to see? Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you. Over to you, Robin.
Thanks so much. Can everyone hear me? And can I just check, does everyone know how to use the reactions button at the bottom? If you look at the bottom right, you'll see a little box that says reactions. Now I want us to do a bit of exercise. Can you clap for me? So I can see that you're all there and alive and well. Lovely. Thanks very much. Right, now here we are, thinking about animal welfare, about research. So clearly we need to think about what sort of research you're doing, but if animals are involved, the general expectation is now that you will need to demonstrate that you are following due care to look after those animals. So what can you measure during your research? What is possible within your own facilities? What do you need to plan for to make sure that you're able to meet those needs? This question around how can you avoid research negatively impacting on animals, that will take a little bit of research, and it will also depend on whether the animals are already in the environment, or is your research introducing new animals into that environment? What do those animals need in terms of meeting their welfare requirements within the environment in which they're going to be living? As you plan for your research, you need to think about who's going to give you the approval to go ahead and work with animals in that setting. You will need not only probably official approval from an ethics committee, but you will need approval from local government authorities as well. And that's going to be covered a little later on in those ethics discussions. So as you're planning for your research, don't just ask your research questions, but plan to think about the welfare of animals that are involved, of people that are involved, and particularly research students are involved. We want to think about their welfare as well. Okay, who's next?
Is it Vincent?
So now we've got the breakout groups.
It's already breakout groups, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got
explain the task.
Yes. So we've got 4 case studies that we'll be giving you all, and we'll kind of put you into randomly assigned groups, and you'll have one of us, either myself or Sam or Vincent or Robin, facilitating those groups. So we'll be there on hand to answer any questions that you might have. In the groups, if you could please appoint a one person to be able to feedback at the end of it. But we'd like you to just kind of read the case studies and look at the kind of species involved, and imagine that you were doing a research project that in some respect involved that species. And if you can consider these questions that are here. So consider the welfare of the animals involved using the frameworks discussed, that's the 5 freedoms and the 5 domains. Consider how welfare might be affected by research in this area. So that could be both animal welfare and human welfare, and how it might be either improved or compromised, and what kind of considerations you might need to put into place to ensure that any risk to the animals is mitigated. So I'll let, I think Anna will be kind of assigning everybody to breakout groups, and you'll shortly be kind of put into those with one of us to be there for you.
Thank you very much. So yes, as you see, we tried to minimize presentations and devote a lot of time to breakout groups as much as possible. Let me just check. Are there any questions about what you've heard so far, or any questions about the task in the breakout groups? We're not having a discussion now, just any quick questions of clarification. You can type them in the chat.
We had one hand up, but I think that was a reaction to Robin's shout out. So just to double check, whoever put their hand up didn't have a question, but I don't think.
Okay. Let's still give them a chance, but we'll be moving to the breakout groups shortly. So the participants will be assigned randomly to breakout groups, and I think Hallie from the ANH Academy will do that. You will have either the poultry, goats, dairy cattle, or equids case study, and you will meet your facilitators there who will help you walk through the task. And at the end of your time, one of you will be the rapporteur, so please select a rapporteur at the beginning, and the rapporteur will be asked to very, very briefly feedback to the group, to the big group, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion. And we are running a little bit behind time, so shall we say that we do 15 minutes and reconvene at 1:15? We'll see if people need more time, but I would suggest 15 minutes for the discussion now. Can I have a nod or a thumbs up from the facilitators? I can see Robin's thumbs up. Kate as well. Yeah, they're virtual thumbs and also real thumbs. I like that. So let's meet in the breakout rooms, and when the time is up, we'll just reconvene here. Good luck, everyone. First breakout groups of the day.
Great, thanks, Anna. So I'll assign folks to breakout rooms now. Just give me one moment, please. You will see a notification appear on your screen to join the breakout room. It will also then send you automatically shortly after that if you do not click go. So please be on the lookout for that in just a moment. Okay, sending folks off now. Hello, everyone. If you have not joined the breakout room, please accept the notification to join the breakout room now.
Honey, is everyone back yet?
They're just coming back now.
Okay.
They were in the middle of discussion when we were kicked out.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, it was. We know that we are running a bit behind, and that the discussions are really interesting. So we let them run for a bit longer, and then we just had to catapult you back into the main room. So hopefully you managed to cover some of the points. And now I wonder if the rapporteurs could present very, very briefly, please, just the main points, and you don't have to have the answers. I'll hand over to you, Robin, to facilitate this bit. In about, ideally, we would do this in about 10 minutes since we're running behind.
Okay, so I'm happy to facilitate, except that we went into groups 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I am assuming who was number 1? Which group was that? Was that the working equids?
That doesn't really matter. I think you can refer them as the poultry, goats, cattle, and equids group.
Okay. Well, I know that the poultry wants to go in the 3rd space, so let's start with working equids if our rapporteur is ready. Who's going to report back on the working equids? And feel free just to speak. You don't need to present. Just share your 2 or 3 key points that you've learned during your discussions.
Just to note that the rapporteur will probably need to request to unmute. So if you could please use the raise hand feature in your participants tab, we can unmute.
Vincent, do you guys have a rapporteur, or is it yourself who's going to tell us? Oh, there's Derek.
Oh, there's Derek. There we go. Derek,
so that's the poultry.
Oh, okay.
If you're ready to go, Derek, please do so.
Yeah, I think I'll go first. So I was in Dr. Robin's group, and we're discussing about poultry, where our first question was consider welfare of the animals involved using the frameworks discussed, and we had intensive, semi-intensive, and extensive systems. So one of the participants raised an important point, saying that the three systems will have different welfare requirements. So that was the point about the first question. And then we also asked how welfare would be affected by research in such a setting or in such a framework. And then we had one of our participants raise a point saying that it's important to contact or to work with service providers in the different areas to make sure that you can try and enforce or implement welfare during the research, because the extension workers are usually listened to by the locals or by the peasants. Yeah, then the last one was how could you mitigate the risk? I think those are the points we had in our group for poultry.
Thanks so much, Derek. That's much appreciated. Maybe if the facilitators can just let us know who's going to be the rapporteur for goats, working equids, and dairy, so that we can make sure.
It looks like Dr. Basharat is available to report back for the equids, if he can be unmuted. Over.
Okay. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, yes?
Yeah, if I can just recap a little what we discussed in the group. We actually looked at the donkey as a means of transportation of this milk to the cooling plants and even to the market. And we basically talked much about the poor infrastructure, the poor road network, and that is why the donkey are very, very important. And also looking at the perishability of milk, it is important that we have the donkey as a means of a value chain, part of the value chain of delivering of milk, even to the consumers, from the market to the consumers. And we're looking at if these donkey are not there, if perhaps they are not in the chain, in the value chain, that means there will be a lot of post-harvest losses, given that milk is very, very perishable, and also that there will also be loss in terms of the amount that the farmers will earn at the end of the day. I think basically this is what we discussed, and we also said that so there's need for welfare, that is donkey welfare, and that even the farmers should be part and parcel of this welfare. When they are not feeling fine, we should have a vet center where these animals will be taken to, and also the farmers should also know some treatments, so that if these vets are not available, they should also be able to key into it and give some medication. And so this is basically what we discussed in the group. Thank you.
Yeah, can I add on?
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Basharat from Nigeria. Yes, you are very right. And it also came out clearly that because among the things is looking at what is the actual, what is, especially in terms like of monetary, what is this contribution that donkeys have in that value chain? And so I think it also came out clearly that this is an area that will require further research so that we can bring it out, especially for policy and policy makers. And there are also issues that came out like what indicators we'll be looking at if we are to do this kind of a research. But these are among the things that can be discussed later. And even there are suggestions on how do we get the wider aspects of policy makers to probably improve those roads where these animals work. And we actually agree that these are still major things that is not easily done within 1 or 2 days. So we still need to have a research to bring out that actual value donkeys in the value chain. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vincent and Dr. Basharat. They were really useful contributions. I'm wondering, Sam, who's going to report back on our lovely small ruminants on goats?
So for our group, it will be Christine.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, my name is Christine from University of Nairobi, Kenya, and our discussion was about goats kept by nomadics in an arid area, and we were looking at we had a case study about high rate of abortion in goats and stillbirth, which was experienced also in women in the same area. And we wanted to know, in One Health, how would we look at this situation? How would you go about the situation? And we were thinking, we talked about goat being a transmitter of diseases to the women, and maybe through taking of milk, which could lead to brucellosis and then cause abortion or stillbirth in women. But at the same time, we looked at that would look at the environment, with the interaction between humans and goats. And then the second one was that maybe the goats, they are in poor health, and this could lead to them not fetching high or enough money, or when they are when the time to be so, they, because of their sicknesses, they fetch very little money, and then these women cannot afford to go to the hospital, and this could lead to them aborting or having all other complications in their pregnancy. So it's about the health of the animal. If the animals are sick, maybe because the nomadics, they depend on these animals for their cash, for their gain. So if they don't have the money, they won't seek medical assistance. Yeah. Maybe someone
Sounds like a really fascinating case study. Yes, thank you. Thanks so much, Christine and Sam. Clara, I'm wondering who's going to report back for the dairy cattle group.
Yes, this was facilitated by Kate. Do we have any volunteers to report back?
Please use the raise hand feature on your participants tab if you'd like to volunteer, or drop a note in the chat box.
Yes, sorry, we just got confused. We were asking about who would be happy to facilitate. I don't want to pick on anyone, but we had some really great comments from Maria. I don't know if you'd feel happy to report back, just to put you on the spot there.
Maria, you need to unmute.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, all good.
Yes, so we discussed different dynamics of the cattle keeping and importance, and in, for example, transmitting disease. So they presented a case study illustrating all these dynamics on how the health of the cattle can impact on the health of the keepers, and then also how these animals are fed and the husbandry situations. So, for example, some of these issues mentioned were sorry, I took some notes. Well, one of the questions for sure was the experiences of the participants on measuring and monitoring welfare. And so one participant said that they were using animal-based indicators, looking at lesions in, for example, in equids. In his experience, another participant mentioned that the cortisol levels. We also discussed how the different application of the two frameworks that mentioned, and how the 5 freedoms, it was much more restrictive, whereas the 5 dimension framework allows to capture all the dynamics and generate more opportunities for these scenarios. I don't know, do you remember other aspects as well? Other participants?
I think you've done really well, Maria, and I've been a terrible chair. I've gone well over the 10 minutes we were actually given. So I think we might thank Kate, Maria, Clara, and all participants in that group. Thanks to everyone for your contributions. And so now we're going to move on to the ethical review part.
I think there was a hand raised before, so let me just check if there is a burning question or a comment from, was it Odiafo? Do you still want to ask a question, or say, you can unmute yourself if you want to, otherwise we'll move. No, I think that's it. And are there any questions coming to the chat at this stage? Odiafo, would you like to come in now?
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Please, I didn't get what you said.
Pardon?
Can you please repeat? Can you please repeat?
I saw your hand was raised, so I was wondering whether you have a question or a comment.
No, please.
Oh, okay.
I was having problem with.
No worries. Thank you. In which case, let's move on to the ethics part with Clara and Delia. Over to you.
So thank you very much, and it's great to have such so many participants and so much enthusiasm here. So myself and Clara are going to present just shortly on animal welfare and review bodies, and then we're going to have another breakout session where again we'll get a chance for everyone to participate a little bit more deeply. Next slide, please. What is an animal welfare and ethical review body? Basically, these are committees set up in institutions, universities, NARS, hospitals, which have the authority to approve research which involves animals. There's actually kind of two different dimensions to this. One is of animal welfare, care, use, what we've heard about the 5 freedoms, the 5 domains, and the other is about the ethics. And the ethics is about, you know, should this be done at all? So sometimes an animal welfare and ethical review body will combine both elements, and sometimes they can be separate. So one committee can look at how the animals are being, their welfare is being affected, and another committee can look at the actual ethics of the research. Next slide. So why do we have these? And I must say, when I first came to work in developing countries 20 years ago, it really was not common. We did our research, we went into the communities, and we did our questionnaires and took samples of milk or blood, and we really didn't get permission from anyone. It was just kind of, that was the way we worked. But times have changed, and now people recognize that there is an ethical responsibility towards the way we use animals and the way we also use people. I hate to say use people, but in actual fact, if we are researchers just going out and asking questionnaires and wasting people's time, you know, when they could be doing other things which are more important, like looking after their kids, you know, we have to justify why we're doing that. Also, if we have committees, they can screen and oversee the design and the protocols used, and if there are problems, they can hopefully identify those so that we get better science. In many countries, of course, now it is legal, and that is increasingly the case in Africa. And even before it was legal, it had become a publishing requirement. So if you send in a paper and you've done research on animals, they say, where is your ethics approval and what is its number? And if you don't have that, you won't be able to publish. And as young researchers and old researchers know, if we don't publish, we perish. Next, and over to Clara.
Thank you for that fabulous introduction, Delia. And I just want to speak about our experience at Brook, because several years ago we set up our own animal welfare and ethical review board. We're not an academic institution, but we conduct a lot of research by ourselves and in partnership. We're actually one of the first INGOs to have set up our own AWERB to look at this. And it's interesting what you say, Delia, about the first question should always be, should this research happen? And you may all be aware of a real debate around the ethics of using animals for research. We, as an animal welfare organisation, we really have to take that into consideration. But we are not an animal rights organisation, so we understand the value that animals can bring in research. And of course, there have been many medical advances that have improved health for animals and people as a result of that research. So if you're interested, there are many books and articles on this real ethical debate about how animals are used for research. And at Brook, we have a very cautious approach. We really look very carefully at any invasive procedures. And we have this framework about what our AWERB does. There is another framework that you will find really useful when you are looking at animals in research. And another point about Brook research, as Delia said, quite often it is human-centric, but it's always worth considering what impact it might have on the animals while you're conducting that research. So there's this framework called the 3 R's, which is now part of law in the UK, and we have the National Centre for Replacement, Refinement and Reduction of Animals in Research. I would recommend that you look at that website. There are some fantastic resources there. They're predominantly focused on laboratory animal use, but the principles can be applied across the board. So yes, it's this concept of, can we replace all of the animals that are proposed in this experiment for something else? That should always be the first question. And there are different ways to do that. If you do really have to use animals as part of the experiment, there are so many ways in which you can really refine what you're doing. And we'll, in our breakout sessions, we can really explore those ways and your thoughts on how you can refine the experiment. So really looking at the methods that you're using to absolutely minimize animal suffering, but as Kate had emphasized, how we improve welfare through accentuating positive experiences. And so this is an example of the handling of mice in the laboratory. Quite often, they're lifted up by their tails, which is painful and very stressful for the mice. And so they developed improved handling methods just using a simple tube. And also always looking at how we can reduce the number of animals used in an experiment. And we will want you to look really carefully at the case studies that we'll present in the breakout rooms for how you could reduce the number of animals that are used. And then just to highlight again the domains of welfare and how that can be used as a framework if you're designing an experiment to look at each point in turn, because it might not be the direct impact of the experiment or the research, but the fact that they're stuck in a corral for hours with no water, for example. So this can be a really helpful framework to refer to. We've got many examples of that. And I'll hand back over to Delia to explain the ILRI perspective and then the task for the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Clara. That was very interesting from the NGO perspective. ILRI is a research institute, so of course our bread and butter is working with animals, and that involves experiments and studies using animals. I've been a member of the Animal Welfare Committee for more than 10 years, and I was also the chair, and I started the IRB, which was the ethics committee. So you can see ILRI is one of these schizophrenic institutes where we have welfare on one hand and ethics on the other, and you need approval for both. As a member of the ICAC, our main task is to review applications for activities that involve animals. And as I said, historically this was often thought to be mainly about research on animals in labs, and increasingly this has been extended to any contact with animals. So if you're going into the field to take a milk sample, you need approval, and if you're using animals for teaching or demonstration or other issues or other things related to education, that also requires approval. And also it's not just approval before the fact, it's that people have to report back, and that we do increasingly, audits and visits and to see how animals are being, because, researchers can put in one thing in their form, and then when you go and see what's happening in their lab, you can find that it's something quite different. So yes, it can be a quite broad mandate. Our other tasks include maintaining and updating standard operating protocols, which are things, kind of a menu which cover everything you do with an animal. So for example, you can move from the standard being you lift the mouse by its tail, to you use a plastic tube, and that's what we should be doing, because we should be trying to reduce distress for animals. All applicants have to inform the committee of any changes and report back. It's been continually evolving. I think we were one of the first animal welfare committees in Africa, because we started in the early 90s, and it's so good to see now that it's present in so many institutions. And that takes us out, we're probably running behind time already, but that takes us into our next breakout session, when you are going to be convened as animal welfare committees. Animal welfare committees always include an institute vet, but they include lay people as well. And you're going to get to look at a application from a scientist who may know more or less than you about animal welfare. And we're going to ask each group to just quickly review it and then report back. Over.
Excellent, thanks Delia and Clara. So yes, Delia pretty much summed it up. We will have, or sorry, is this Clara's bit, or did you want to explain it more, or shall we go directly into breakout groups? No, I think we are going into breakout groups. So it is similar to the previous one. You will be assigned randomly to 4 different rooms. You will have your facilitators there, and it would be great if the facilitators should perhaps share the screen with their case study, but I will also send all the case study through the chat to everyone. Hallie, if you are with us, could you please break us up into groups?
Yep, I will do that momentarily. Thank you. Okay, sending folks off now.
Group joining back already. Hi, Clara. All good? Is everyone back now?
We just have one more room. It looks like Delia's room is wrapping up.
Okay, brilliant.
They should be automatically kicked back here in about 5 seconds.
Okay, great. Do we have Delia's group back now?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, brilliant. So Delia, I'll hand over to you. We're obviously running behind time, but we have permission to run over by a few minutes. So I wonder if you could invite the rapporteurs to speak, and you have about 10 or so minutes for this. Would that be okay?
Yes, I think it'll be good to get feedback from the groups. Let's start with our group, Nicholas, because I know he's ready. And then maybe the other rapporteurs can indicate on chat the order they want to report back in. And can each rapporteur keep it to 2 minutes? We had a great discussion, so I hope you guys did too. So over to Nicholas, reporting from the African Swine Fever Group.
Hali, could you unmute Nicholas? Please?
Nicholas Nguili.
Yeah, Nicholas, you should have just received a request to unmute.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, so ours was reviewing, a proposal and an application on a study on African swine fever. And a number of issues came up. One, we felt that the researcher did not really justify why they need this kind of more invasive kind of study, and they need to use, like layman's terms or, a language which could be understood by, anyone to justify why a study on the African swine fever in the way they are doing is necessary. And then, of course, they also need to justify why they need this huge number of animals to be infected, of around 50 pigs. So could we use less than that? And then on the routine, kind of management practices, we felt that they need to give more information on the feeding, and the other aspects like weighing and measuring temperature. Could they reduce the frequency so that they don't really kind of disturb the animals so much? Then another comment was on the humane endpoint, that the researcher was not very clear on exactly how they've been deciding that this animal is suffering enough, so they needs to be euthanized. So that there's need for a protocol, or the use of measurements for suffering or some checklists to really make that decision. And also on the euthanizing, how they do it. Personally, I felt that they could use another more humane approach to euthanize the animal. So majority of us felt that we could reject for more, to address those comments and resubmit. But one of us felt that this study is not necessary. They could achieve the same with another form of study, like, an observational study with some genotyping before, they move to this level of this kind of study. Yeah. Thank you. Over.
That's great, Nicholas. Good summary. I'm not sure who else is ready to report. Does Anna or other people have information on who can report? Over.
Anyone? Yes, there is.
Can report.
Maria is raising a hand.
Yes.
Okay.
I can report the case study of the vaccination of cattle with East Coast fever vaccine. Generally, we found that there was a lack of information and justification on many of the points. So some of the points we were considering the possibility of refining and or replacing, for example, these points where the age of the cattle that they suggested it should be quite young cattle of 5 to 7 months, and maybe this could be refined. This was to test the vaccination, and then as a replacement it was also the breed, because they were testing a vaccine for an endemic disease in East Africa with an exotic breed. They didn't give enough information about the health requirements. They only said that it should be free of the disease. In general, there was lack of justification on the numbers, and also they didn't design the study with a control group. So obviously this is difficult to test in this case. There was also no information on previous work and how this work is building on other studies, and no reference either, which participants suggested that this is not useful for reviewers because they might not be experienced on the area, and then obviously any reference is needed. Also no information on the implementation of the study and whether the people doing the vaccination and handling the animals, they have experience, and how is this gonna monitor. What else? Well, the quarantine conditions, and then also a very important issue was that the animals, the sort of a strict, more of the euthanization of the animals as well. They said that those that weren't dying, they would be sacrificed on the 28th day afterwards. So this was found quite not justified, this measure at all. I don't know if I. And then generally the form, one of the discussions was whether the form was allowing to give enough detail or not, but actually they didn't feel information that the form was suggesting, and yeah, and they didn't give enough detail, so it wouldn't be accepted.
Great comments. Let's, in the interest of time,
sorry.
But no, I think that it was and very similar to our group, so good. Do we have somebody else with a hand up waiting to report?
Hello everyone, can you hear me please?
Yes, we hear you.
Hello. Okay, I'm reporting for group 2. Hello?
We can hear you very faintly. Please go ahead, let's try again.
And maybe try and get closer to the microphone.
Okay, can you hear me very well now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be reporting for group 2. We discussed about the use of animals for training groups. Okay, we started by discussing whether it is necessary to use animals or to use alternatives. And someone responded and mentioned that it is necessary to use animals, especially when we are teaching veterinarians or other animal health experts about collecting of blood, for instance. It is necessary that they are taught using animals actually, so that they get to know how to collect blood samples from animals. So someone also mentioned that it's necessary that clients should bring their animals could be collected for investigation of various parameters that could give veterinarians knowledge on how to treat various ailments presented by animals. So in essence, it boils back research concerning animals instead of alternatives. I also mentioned an instance in my school. I'm an animal scientist in Akwa Ibom State University in Nigeria. So I mentioned an instance in my school where I conduct a lot of researches on growth, welfare, nutrition, several parameters on animals. I mentioned that it is necessary to use animals, not alternative, because I am trying to investigate parameters that could be used to improve animal welfare. So it is not possible to use any other thing apart from animal. But what I do is that I teach my students how to handle animals. Right from the time of transportation, I teach them on how to transport animals from farms to experimental sites with minimal stress. And when these animals arrive, we allow them some time to rest, to give them water with glucose, to give them energy. We also give them feed and allow them to acclimatize to the environment for about 2 weeks before the commencement of the actual experiment. And even during the period of experimentation, we handle this animal very well. We consider the welfare of these animals, the well-being of these animals. We feed them, take care of them, and even while collecting blood, I take time to teach my students how to collect blood without exposing the animals to unnecessary stress, how to handle the needles, the bevel, how to position the bevel of the needle so that the animals are not exposed to stress. Even at the point of slaughtering, I emphasize we do not have an AWEP body in my school, but being an animal welfare, someone that is passionate about animal welfare, I take it upon myself to sensitize and enlighten my students and colleagues on this. So I make it known to them that even at the point of slaughtering of animals, they should not be exposed to stress, because this will cause glycogen depletion, which will affect meat quality after slaughtering. So that's what.
That's great to hear, and I think that emphasis on individual values and showing that you care and teaching students. Sorry to cut you off a little, but I'm very much aware of the time, and I know Anna has to close down the session. And I think we still have one group which maybe has 1 minute to report, but that was really inspiring, and I thank you very much for that feedback.
Thank you, thank you.
So who's next? It's Segun. I can't. Oh, Segun. Yeah. There you go. Your the floor.
All right. Thank you. In my group, we talk about getting ethical approval and filling the approval form. That's what we talk about basically. And I will just do it briefly. Then my coordinator can round up. We'll talk about stating your objectives clearly, and then giving the background to the statement, the reason why you're carrying out the research, and you also show your work plans clearly, and the types and nature of samples you are going to collect, then the proposed date of ending the research, and then making out your justification to come out clearly. That's where you buttress your objectives in that particular, for the research. And then it is very important that you stick to your methodology, not going against what the ethical body has approved for you. And also there was a discussion in my group. I asked the question in the general platform, but I still raised it in our group. If you are not handling samples, do I necessarily need to get ethical approval? And then the discussion centered on the fact that I may not necessarily get ethical approval if I'm not touching animals or getting samples, or I'm not disrupting their peace. But all I need to get is human ethical approval. So let me hand over to my coordinator to round up because of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Segun. That was such a great summary. Yeah, I think just to wrap up, one of the great parts of our discussion was the fact that not many people have actually experienced writing an ethics form before. They might have been involved in a study that had animal ethics, but they actually hadn't really seen an ethics form or written one themselves. So it was just really great to go over it in general and understand that writing an ethics form is also kind of the same as how we have a peer review. It's to get extra experience from other people, and going through the process can help refine and improve our study as well. Thanks, Delia. Back to you.
So thank you all, and I must say you are all great. You are all great committee members, and at ILRI we often look for external committee members, so we now have your names on record. A great job to everyone, and with that I will hand over to Anna for the close. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia, and thank you, everyone. So we were hoping to have a bit of a general discussion, but We are already 5 minutes over, and I know that several of you will be attending another learning lab in something like 20 minutes. So I think we will cut the discussion out, but if you have any questions or reflections, please type them in the chat and we will consolidate them with the help from colleagues from ANH, and we will be to share answers to them when you get a follow-up email. So obviously this is a session that was supposed to be a 3-hour face-to-face session delivered in Malawi. We realized this is not the same experience. Hopefully you still found it useful, and obviously it's not comprehensive, more like an introduction, invitation to consider animal welfare in your work. Let's see how you feel now after the session. How much do you know about animal welfare now? Again, bearing in mind that we only had just over 2 hours. Please submit your answers now. Last chance, I'm about to close it. So this is the results. There is still someone who knows absolutely nothing. Clearly we didn't do a very good job, but it's great to see that most of you are in the know quite a bit to know quite a lot actually. So that's encouraging, and we were happy to share some further materials with you after the session, and we just invite you to continue this journey with animal welfare. Let's see about the importance. You considered animal welfare quite important in research, but let's see if anybody has changed their mind there. For a brief moment we had 100%, but let's not this influence your decision. It's all anonymous. Well, I think obviously I already forgotten the previous results, but I think, yeah, we definitely managed to move most of you into the very high importance zone. And again, this is an invitation and we would like to engage with you further and continue this journey. Please keep typing your questions. Again, we will get back to you with those. And I think we just have one more thing to do, to thank all of you for joining the session. We really loved interacting with you, despite the few technical issues for which we apologize. The very first learning lab and of this conference, and also a very new experience for us. And thank you all the panelists from an amazing array of organizations. It was such a pleasure to work with you, and hopefully we can do it next year at the face-to-face in Malawi, hopefully. And wish all participants here a very good conference next week, and enjoy the rest of the learning labs.
Great, thank you, Anna. And with that, we will say thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you at additional learning labs and later next week during the research conference. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.